Okay, so it's day 220 since Russia invaded. Yesterday, Russia annexed officially, illegally, but still officially annexed these four oblasts of Ukraine into the Russian Federation. And today there was a huge win. And when I say a huge win, I mean the biggest win next to the counteroffensive. One day after the annexation, we see this huge military victory. It's a poke in the eye to Putin, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, I'm going to start here because I keep hearing these questions of like, well, what happens next? Okay, this is Putin's speech. Will Russia always be Russia? And if you have the ability or the time, here I did a response to Putin's September 30th speech, and about a half dozen people have told me I listened to the thing all the way through. You people are freaking awesome. If you have the willingness, the fortitude to listen to his whole speech, now I give some commentary along the way, but if you have the willingness to do that, you really care about this and you are trying to understand and absorb what's going around so you can answer when people are saying Russian propaganda points. Okay, here's his speech, and I want to highlight a few things, not the things that I highlighted yesterday, but a few things because of where we're going today. So here's his speech. He's talking about these historical injustices in the West. And he's talking about today we'll sign treaties, the ascension of the Donetsk, the Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions. It says it's undoubtedly their right, an inherent right sealed in Article 1 of the UN Charter, which directly states the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. Yeah, but you can't go across borders, grab the people, and do that. So, no, it's not like that. And the UN Secretary General said, no, this is not okay. We will not recognize this. But then he said this, and this is key to today. I want everyone to remember this. The people living in Luhansk, Donetsk, and Kherson and Zaporizhia have become our citizens forever. Well, apparently some of them haven't because of today's events, and I'll talk about that. He also said, we will defend our land with all the forces and resources that we have, and we will do everything we can to ensure the safety of our people. This is the great liberating mission of our nation. It's not playing out like you said, and it's really like Putin's in this all or nothing kind of place where he really has doubled down and now he's either going to win big or lose big. And let's go and look at what's happened today. So here's the intelligence update from the British Ministry of Defense, and they said a couple interesting things. On September 30th, yesterday, Russian forces almost certainly struck a convoy southeast of the town of Zaporizhia. Local authorities report 25 civilians killed. Munition involved was likely a Russian long-range air defense missile being used in the ground attack role. Now, I highlighted this because yesterday there was a kind of a he said, she said about the Ukrainians saying the Russians had bombed. And what they were doing was this caravan was going into Zaporizhia or going deeper into Zaporizhia to get people to pull them out. So as they're going in, the Russians bombed them. Now, the Russians were saying that the Ukrainians bombed them. Okay, but the Russians bombed them, and these are supposed to be their new citizens. It's really incredible. Do they care about them or not? The answer is no, they don't care about them. It is used in ground attack. These type of weapons are used in ground attack role, almost certainly have been driven by overall munition shortages. Russia is expending strategically valuable military assets in attempts to achieve tactical advantage, and in the process killing civilians it now claims are its own citizens. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Okay, so let me shift gears to what the big story was today. The withdrawal from Lyman. Now, I remember when Lyman was taken, and I remember watching some people that were talking about like strategically military or people that lived in Ukraine talking about, hey, look, it's this crossroads. There's a railroad track here. Okay, here's a deep state map. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Here's Severodonetsk. Remember, we lost that, and then they lost its sister city right across the river. And then, so Lyman is not too far, but it sits at strategic crossroads. It was getting resources, and these are railroad tracks. And so the Russians have used this network of railroads in order to function and supply things. And they've lost these. They've lost everything. Now, this was all cut off today. The deep state map hasn't updated yet, but they've essentially encircled this group. And when they've encircled them, well, now they can't get out. And they bagged an army. We don't know what the numbers are yet, but it's probably upwards of 3,000, maybe as far as 5,000 either captured, killed, or wounded in Lyman. This is big. Russia withdraws from Lyman in a major victory from Ukraine. Russian Defense Ministry says it has withdrawn the troops from the strategic eastern town of Lyman in connection with the creation of a threat of encirclement. Allied troops were withdrawn from the settlement of Lyman to a more advantageous lines. That's what they said. They were drawing to more advantageous lines. Wait a minute. Didn't Putin just say that we will defend our land with all the forces and resources we have, and we will do everything? And didn't he just say the people living in Luhansk and Donetsk and Kherson, they become our citizens forever? It turns out, no, you haven't. It is said without providing evidence that it has inflicted heavy casualties on Ukrainian troops in the fight for the town. So they lie about this again and again and again. So don't worry about whatever they say about casualties. The moments before, I mean, I'm sure they're taking some casualties, but heavy casualties, like when they said that they inflicted 4,000 on the Ukrainians in the few days of the counteroffensive, no, that would have been 800 a day over those 5. Yeah, that's not. Okay, moments before the Russian withdrawal announcement, Ukraine's defense ministry said its forces had entered Lyman. So that's what was going on there. Here's this great video. Let's see if we can click on it. Yeah. And it's on Twitter, so I'm sure that this is fine for me to post. But that's great to see over the city. And they're gonna duct tape that to the city entrance. Yeah, that's just great to see. Okay, Moscow has used Lyman as a logistical hub in operations for the northern part of the Donetsk region. Its fall would mark the most serious setback for Russian forces since the lightning counteroffensive. So it's really big. I mean, it's hard to explain how big this is. This is right up there with the counteroffensive in Moscow, and I'm not sure what the order is between Moscow and Lyman. Okay, next. Here is RT's take on the same thing. Russian forces withdraw from a key Donbass town. Russian troops and Donbass forces have withdrawn their defensive from the positions of Krasny Lyman. That's the Russian name for the same city. Earlier, the head of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushkin, called the situation in the settlement alarming, saying it had been half encircled by Ukrainian troops. Well, it's full encircled now. And here's the official quote from the ministry, due to the emergent threat of encirclement, the Allied troops have withdrawn from the settlement of Krasny Lyman and deployed to more advantageous positions. Like, it's almost like that you would think they're going to say, we have a glorious advance to the rear or something along those lines. But they didn't say anything other than we ran away, which is what they essentially were saying. Okay. So here's the Guardian. Ukrainian forces perform victory dance after liberating Lyman. They entered the key city. The debacle came hours after Putin called it Russia's forever, as I just read you. But Putin's high-stakes strategy appeared to be unraveling on the battlefield. And so that's really what's going on. A colossal grouping of up to 5,000 enemy soldiers was facing defeat. So again, we don't know what the total numbers are, but it was big. Okay, and again, there's the actual video on Twitter again. Okay, now this comes as the Kremlin is trying to calm fears in Russia itself, and I've talked about this extensively over the last few days. So this is Russia's first draft since the Second World War, and it's creating anger and chaos around the country. Even RT, so every day, Margarita Siomen, head of the media company RT, and noted pro-war hawk, posts the stories of Russians who she says were illegally issued draft notices. Naming and shaming is meant to put pressure on draft committees. Now notice it's focused on draft committees, not on Putin himself. But it also bolsters her political credentials as a person who can lobby the government. And then here, do you really think that if Putin didn't even want to send conscripts to Ukraine, he meant to send hairdressers, female cardiologists, people with bad backs, and a teacher of the year from Peskov, a musician in an orchestra, or a theater director, she said on state television last week? The criticism of draft boards diverts pressure from Putin. Now that's really interesting, who she often calls the boss. A lot of what's going on is really interesting about how Putin keeps being protected. His generals are to blame, the draft boards are to blame, but Putin seems to be rising above the criticism because nobody really wants to take him head on. But the situation in Russia is bad. More Russians, and this is the talking point, when you're dealing with trolls, more Russians have run away from Russia since mobilization than have invaded Ukraine. That is fascinating. Okay, last article I'm going to show you is this very short article. U.S. Lend Lease for Ukraine enters into force on October 1st. Lend Lease is on the table, so Ukraine can get access to all kinds of equipment. All they have to do is ask, and it has to be delivered within a certain period of time. And it's just it's unlimited. It's Lend Lease. So that frames everything for today. Huge victory. What's next for Putin? I'm not sure, but he keeps getting rolled back immediately after saying it's ours forever. Now, here's what I want to know from you. What are your questions? Help me scratch where you itch. What do you need to know? How can I serve you better in these daily updates? Please tell me in the comments below. If you're new, would you please consider subscribing? If you like this video, please like so that YouTube's algorithm knows it's a good video for people who want to know about Ukraine. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares enough to watch this video about Ukraine.